All right, so this is the third installment of COscillator Forum. I'm pretty excited about today. We got a pretty good cast for the next hour or so. We got Jonas Tempel, who's a co-founder over at Beatport and currently heads some special projects over there, which I hope he'll tell us some more about during the next hour. We got Ben Archuleta. Did I pronounce that wrong? Archuleta?
It's Archuleta, yeah.
Archuleta, okay. Ben Archuleta of Moody Recordings. He's a label manager there, and he's been signed to Toolroom and Witty Records, among a bunch of other places. Then we got Mayen Music, or we got Miguel Mayen, who has released on Global Underground, and as well as Moody. And he currently runs Norobot Music. And then we got Eric Bingham, who has been signed to places like Trax Records and Hedkandi, Ministry of Sound's record label, and currently runs his current label, Clandestine Recordings. And then you got me, who, you know, just doing this. So anyways, yeah. I do some writing and stuff. So anyways, since you guys are all technology people, I figured we can talk about how, you know, everything has changed pretty rapidly during, you know, this pandemic, and how something that used to be very visceral and in person is now moved towards the cloud and is becoming increasingly more decentralized. So I figured we should talk about that. And I think a good place to start would be with Beatport, since you guys just launched on Twitch today, which is pretty cool. And then you've also raised money for a lot of causes with your Reconnect, and you've also been developing a Beatport Link, or at least it's been in its infancy and has been out and coming of age during the pandemic. So I was just wondering, what kind of lessons and observations about the industry as a whole can we draw over the last 7 months as it relates to all this? If anyone wants to say something.
I mean, that is a long question with a very, very, very long answer. The reality is all DJs are out of work. And we felt that that was a tragedy. And obviously our business is a marketplace between content creators and performers. And to synthesize and start to recreate some level of connection, we had the idea to start to do these events kind of one-off to see what could happen. And we did a couple, and then we gained some confidence. We started to do like the first Reconnect, which was kind of like a more or less a small festival, 24 hours, I think, of programming. And we just got a massive reach. And it just turned us from being curious about it to being hyper optimistic that there was a way out of this to keep the world connected. And we very intentionally chose the name Reconnect just for those reasons. So, you know, we take it day by day. Obviously, eventually the world will get back to something. I don't know if it'll ever go in the near term back to what it was, but it'll return. Optimism drives momentum. And I think people, you know, humans are very resilient. We'll adjust, we'll figure it out, and we'll get back to whatever it is we really want to do. And so I believe that, you know, no one can predict the future. I imagine we'll get locked down once or twice more this winter. But I think by this time next year, we should be getting back to normal. And so between now and then, we've taken to the airwaves to try to put as many DJs to work as we can. And on top of that, we're starting dedicated programming with Twitch, where we're actually hiring DJs, we're paying them. And we're building residencies and letting them kind of build their personal profiles on our platforms. And we think that's really important. You know, we're nothing without the ambition of DJs. So, you know, it's a shared moment.
Do you think,
Go ahead.
yeah, do you think that as things start opening up in different regions globally, there will be opportunities for DJs who, you know, don't live in that particular country to possibly stream into clubs that are open in that area? Do you imagine this new channel opening up, providing some sort of, you know, almost club night in areas where that is possible from DJs all the way across the world where it's not? Or do you think that's a little...
You know, I can't speak to that. What I think will happen is I think this is here to stay. I believe that tour routing and everything will be like, you know, 10 nights in a row of, you know, active DJing in a nightclub or a festival. And then I believe there will be a couple nights of digital performance. And so you might have your full production and the film crew, and those will be hard ticketed events, just like going to the event itself in person. And I think more and more artists will seek digital revenue. And there's no way this is going back to any other way. There's like, I know at least 10 startups that are underway right now going after this market. They're highly funded. This is never going back. And it's in the artist's best interest. You know, you hear a lot of whining online about, oh, the good old days when the artists made so much money and blah, blah, blah. And it just changed, you know. When 25 years ago, when basically running a record company was a manufacturing business, you basically licensed content and you made a physical product, there was a ton of margin on that product. Yeah, we could pay a lot of people when we sold a CD for $20. But, you know, when you sell access to a 60 million song catalog for $9 a month, there's not a lot of money to go around. And so you need you got to write a hit first and foremost. Second, you got to go on tour. And a lot of older artists don't want to go on tour anymore. They're just exhausted. And so this is a great opportunity for young and old artists to build, to either build their presence prior to their fame and real touring, and on the tail end, extend the value of their brand. And I honestly, I think across the full spectrum of artists and performers, they will stay in this lane for probably for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I would have to say I agree. Alex, you and I talked about this once before. I had a conversation with my cousin who's in a band that got pretty successful for a while, and we were having a conversation about how the music industry had this major shift over the last 20 years where, you know, you would tour and live out of a van and make pennies just to push album sales because that's where you made your money. And then everything flipped 180 degrees where you made all your money from what, you know, from the in-person events, because there wasn't any money really being made in the actual sale of the music. And this is kind of another shift like that. You know, it's another shift that's going to be like, okay, well now the industry's, I mean, it's still going to exist. People are still going to want music. They're still going to want events and dancing and stuff like that. It's just going to be in a different format. And it's going to be up to us to adapt to the new way that people want to consume what we do.
I've heard, so, you know, getting back to how content, the music isn't worth as much as it used to be. I've been reading.
I didn't say that.
Oh, okay. Because I
said per unit.
Per unit. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, you got to understand. I mean, think about it. And how old are you?
I'm 31.
Okay. So when you were 5 years old, there was CDs and vinyl, and you had to buy the whole album. And that was even if you liked one track. And even as DJs, we would go to the record store and we would buy a full album to play one track. And of course, there's a lot of money.
I was going to say that it's the same thing with samples, right? Like a couple of years back, you would buy a sample pack that used to be worth like $20 for like 2 samples that you might use, right? Now you have Splice, you have like Loop Cloud, and you can do the same model where like you just like buy 1 sample at a time. And I think that that has changed the game for producers as well.
Yeah, what I was going to bring up with that was that with streaming, and there's this like almost misconception that you don't make as much money off of streaming, because I never really thought this in the past, but I've been looking more into it. But when people would buy a track back in the day, that was it. That was the only revenue stream they would get from that track. Once they sold it for the track for $1 or they sold it on the CD, that was it. They were probably not going to get that customer to buy that particular piece of music again unless they lost it or they bought it as a gift for somebody else. But nowadays, even though music isn't like you're only getting paid fractions of a penny from Spotify, if people listen to that music over and over and over again, it has a much longer lifespan. Do you guys think that that's actually true, or is it still like, or is the artist getting less and less money nowadays?
I think it depends really if the music itself is good, because in the past, if you had good marketing, you could sell an album once and make a chunk of money off of the album because you marketed it well. Now it has to be good enough that people go back to it. And so you have to actually make better music so that people will go back and listen to it multiple times. And basically, they're not paying each time they do it, but you're getting paid each time they go back to it. So you have to make something that's going to make people want to go back more and more often, rather than just getting it once, listening to it a bit and then sticking it in the collection.
Do you guys think that's the case?
So to me, I think that honestly it challenges the artist, right, to find some other like revenue streams. If you only want to like live off of your like Spotify playlist or like whatever, I don't think you're ever gonna make it. I think that there's the same music that you're actually like sending to Spotify, you could like actually license that for like ads and TV and movies and all this other stuff. Those are some outlets that most of the like artists, they never even like consider, because they were like so focused on like, oh yeah, I want to be in Spotify, or I want to like release on Beatport, or I want to be on the radio, right? But things have changed to where like it allows us to actually like get more creative. And I think that the challenges of the streaming services now makes you as an artist become more of like an entrepreneur, like not only like someone that writes music.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, but also I think that there's a lot of different cross references, or a lot of people are having problems finding out where their music's actually going to fit in and actually going to sell. So there's a lot of people that write music and they don't know what genre it's going to go into, and they just keep focusing on producing and not really thinking about like where it's going to fit. I think sometimes artists forget that. I think everyone does. Sometimes we just start writing something and we just get on this creative little wave and just keep writing it. But again, it all comes down, I think I agree with Eric, it comes down to the content. It also comes down to how serious the artist is at pushing their music onto getting onto bigger labels. And if they just want to release music for free on SoundCloud every week, because there's a lot of those artists out there too.
Are there any services or avenues that's a good place for people who haven't quite figured that out to look at? Any resources or anything like that you guys know of?
I mean, you have sites like DistroKid if you want to release your own music, and you can like test out how like the people on Spotify are going to receive your releases and all this other stuff. Like you can pay. I think that Lander started like as an online mastering, and now they do distribution. You were mentioning that SoundCloud is also like pushing that avenue as well. So for you as an artist to find yourself on like where you fit, I think that paying a couple of bucks to put your music out there will give you a pretty good idea, right?
Mm-hmm. And I also think it depends on what your motivation is for putting music out. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that just want it for the creative outlet and they just want to produce music and just put it out there to the world. And, you know, it's the same person who likes to sketch in their, you know, sketch on their couch, and they're going to draw and they're going to do their art because they want to do their art. And then there's other people that are looking to it specifically as a career or to make money or to make that. And they're making different decisions about where they're putting out their music and what, and, you know, to Ben's point, what music they're writing. You know, if you want to make money, if you want to make a living, and if you want to, you know, and have it be a long-term career, doing something that's, you know, super niche, underground, whatever, it's just not, you're making a mistake to go down that route. If you're doing it from the artistic standpoint, great, do whatever you want to do, you know. But there's definitely styles and genres of music and the avenues that go along with those that make way more money than others. So if money is the option, you're going to go one route. If, you know, the artistic side is the option, you're going to go maybe a different route. And I think a lot of us fall kind of in between. You know, we want to do the things that we love and hopefully get it out there to a few people.
That reminds me of a good audience question that we had. 1 second, I just got a weird thing pop up. So anyways,
Is it porn? No.
no, I mean it you know, if techno is porn, then yes.
Hey.
So I mean, it's kind of erotic for me. I actually went to this really cool warehouse in Medellin where they had all these like tube TVs all over the place, and on it was being played vintage pornography, and they kind of had it glitching out, and that was probably the coolest visual I've ever seen personally. But I digress. Getting to this audience question. So Alex V asks, I find more and more labels branching out from their original sound. For example, Hot Creations bridging tech with funky Latin tracks, but usually only with larger artists. Any advice on how to get signed with a genre-bending track if you are a smaller artist?
I think Hot Creations would be Miguel's specialty.
I don't think that was the question. It wasn't about Hot Creations. I mean, listen, I talk to a lot of musicians, and I'm in a different camp. So I make music and I produce for a hobby. My ambitions are incredibly low. I do it for the craft, for the creative release. It's not my career, but I enjoy being good at it. So I put my heart into it, and when I really dig into a project, I try to make it as good as I can. And I think that's what a lot of people try to do. By the way, Miguel, we got our track signed today. I forgot to tell you.
What? Where to?
I'll catch up with you on that later.
Oh, shit.
No big announcement?
Yeah.
No.
Breaking news for
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Jeez.
Should I say it was Hot Creations? No, it wasn't. But it's a cool label. Anyway, so, but the point is, like, it just really depends on what your goals are. Like, listen, if you think this is going to be your career and you're going to build an audience for yourself, then you have to treat it as such. You know, you have to become a brand, and you have to write hits. And a hit doesn't mean a top 40. That's not the point. But you have to have a genre-defining track that finds an audience. And it's probably not going to be your first one. And so you have to stick with it and have some tenacity in the category. And most people just give up too soon. You know, I've been messing around with this for, I don't know, 15 years maybe. And I'm finally feeling confident in the studio. But it's, you know, I don't do 50 hours a week in the studio like young producers. You know, I get in there when I can, and it's a small part of my life, and I love it. So it really just, you know, it lines up with, I guess the results are an equal proportion to the effort in all this. And even if you put a ton of effort into things, it doesn't mean anything. If you don't understand how to play the game, you'll never win. And to win, you have to write something that pulls an audience onto you.
And do you think artists can get away with, let's say, you know, they want make something a little different, something with a little more of a signature? Do you think they can get away with that nowadays with how labels are structured, or is that more of a thing in the past?
The biggest haters are the people that are not being successful. So So my friends who become successful and everyone turns on them because they quote unquote sold out, they just never look back. And I wouldn't either. It's pointless. Yes, I got successful. End of apology. I don't know what to say. You know, the idea of art in any form isn't to just starve. It's just, you know, be your best. And if that works, then you'll find an audience. If it doesn't work, it's not a problem. I don't think anybody really judges it. It's just literally the people that become successful somehow become targets. And that's completely ludicrous.
Is that because they have just more of a public presence and like almost like a wider target, or is that just a jealousy thing?
I don't know. What's your answer?
I don't know, man.
Yes, you do.
I think it's a jealousy thing for sure. I think it's a jealousy thing for sure. And I think it has to do with, I mean, we're all like it's like, you know, it's the same thing with when you go to a seafood restaurant, or when we did go to a seafood restaurant and used to see like one lobster is trying to get out and the other one's pulling them down. It's just like, it's going to happen wherever you go. And I think, and of course people are going to be a little bit jealous of watching someone's success. But I mean, as an adult or as a human being, you should always try to like kind of swallow it up and just say, hey, I've got to do better, and be a little bit more harsh and more decisive on your decisions that you're making as an artist. You know, are you a loose cannon on social medias? Are you just trying to get attention by gimmicks? Are you actually really putting the work in and not talking about it? I mean,
honestly, Ben, I disagree with all of that. I think you do whatever you do because you want something. I would say that the biggest target for hate is DJ duos like Chainsmokers.
Right.
I don't really care what anybody says. Those dudes write hits. Hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a brilliant marketing strategy too. So
no, it's hits. It's a brand. They built it. They were incredible songwriters. Girls loved it. Selfie? Are you kidding me? It's a perfect track. And so, is it a track I want to write personally? No, because I can't relate to it, and it wouldn't sound authentic coming from me. But that's the point. You know, when you get in a studio with a vocalist, one of the greatest challenges in that moment isn't the singing and getting the pitch right. It's that you even believe what they're singing. It's the same with the songwriter. It can't just miss a line. That's why everyone finds their hits in the 20s. There's very few 50-year-olds, people my age, that are writing hits because nobody has the same angst in their life anymore. You're kind of like over it. Like, yeah, I'm good. You know, like when you're 22, you're just pissed about everything. You want more, nothing's right. And, you know, it gives you this motivation in a fight. I mean, and so you do what you want to do. And you do gimmicks. It's not even fair to call it a gimmick. You do what you do.
Yeah,
and
but
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I'm not saying that like in a negative fashion. I'm saying that's just what artists have reached out to do as far as approaching this. And personally, I take the different.
I think it's an insult. I think it's an insult to the consumer. The consumer is smart enough to know if things are a gimmick or not. Like Black Eyed Peas teaming up with Bad Bunny, trying to extend their career. That's a gimmick. It probably worked okay, but it's not a real thing. You know, Billie Eilish singing her heart out as a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old, that's not a gimmick. That's just pure talent. And the consumer knows. It's a big difference.
And I think, you know, talking about the consumer, whether it's a gimmick or not, I don't think they care if they like the song. They don't care if this was a marketing ploy or if this was a, you know, whatever. If they like it, they like it. They're going to get it. So if you write things that people like, they're going to buy it and you're going to be popular and you're going to make money. And it's just a matter of connecting with the people who are consuming whatever you're doing. You know, it's like, you know, my day job is in the restaurant industry, and it's the same with restaurants. You know, you can make the best food in the world, and if it doesn't connect with your customer, your place is going to fail. It's going to close. You know, you have to make things that connect with the people that you're trying to connect with, you know?
Yeah. I I also think that this whole like pandemic and not being able to go to clubs and like all this other stuff, you know, like where you usually like network with people to like get your music out, right? I think that it also has opened up the ability for artists to actually start generating their own followers, right? With how they're engaging with social media, which is like the next big thing for artists, because like if you are buying followers, you can totally tell, right? Because like, I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? And like in the world right now, I think artists control their narrative now with how they're actually like building their fan base. You know, you have people that stream on Twitch, right? And they're making money from like people that actually like them for what they're doing, right? Which goes back to like your music, and as an artist, how you're going to like present yourself. Don't worry about the big labels. Worry about that person who is like following you since day one, right? And build on that. Like the bigger labels will come later. I think that's like my biggest belief. If they believe in your music, it's because like there's some other people believing in that as well. So that's what I think has changed a lot now.
Yeah. Speaking of gimmicks, you know, getting kind of to what Eric said, how people don't really, you know, care if it's a gimmick or not in a lot of senses. That just kind of, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that reminded me of the KFC controversy at Ultra Music Festival, where everyone was giving KFC all this hell for the Colonel with his marshmallow helmet going up on stage and, you know, doing his thing. And that generated a lot of controversy, but what it also did was generate a lot of engagement. So when people do these gimmicks, it can kind of go both ways. Have you guys seen any other examples of that happening, or do you think it was actually pretty that reflected kind of negatively on their brand for doing something like that?
I mean, I'll take this one. It's easy.
Okay.
The team behind Marshmallow is a genius at every level. So
Do you know who he
everything
is?
they do, I think I read it once.
Yeah.
But it's not. I don't care.
Mhm.
I think it's a brand. It's got a massive reach. It's managed extraordinarily well, and they do really interesting channel partnerships. They reach into the dance culture and into pop music culture, and they attract 11-year-olds by the billions. I mean,
True.
And the parents pay.
yeah, it's not my sound. I can't really relate to it, but I respect it 100%. And I don't really care if a bunch of haters don't like Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was a gimmick. It worked, and you're talking about it. So I would say it's from a marketing point of view, it worked. I mean,
Yeah, I would agree.
Agreed.
Yeah, it didn't. Like if people were giving it all this hell, it's kind of like you know, we see it in politics nowadays with people like Trump, for instance, where he'll go on and say something inflammatory, and people are like, "Oh, that's gonna kill his campaign." But meanwhile, you look at his engagement, and it's through the roof. And a lot of analysts have said that that's the reason why he won, because he knows how to get engagement. And there's that adage that no press is bad press. So, you know, which people like Adam Grant from University of Pennsylvania, who's an industrial psychologist, might, you know, have some words to say about that, you know, and some subtleties on it. But, you know, there's a reason why that adage comes into play. There's no such thing as bad press. And it worked for KFC. Do you guys, and you don't really see that as much anymore. I don't think so. Like, at least with like individual artists, I just keep on getting reminded of how Alice Cooper sold out his show in London, where what he did was he got a big rig semi truck with a superimposed a picture of him on the side of the semi with him like basically naked with a snake wrapping around him, and then they drove it into in a roundabout, and then they purposely broke the truck down in the middle of the roundabout, and you know, they weren't selling any tickets to the gate, but now there's this half-naked snake guy who's blocking, rush hour traffic in the middle of London downtown, and the news reporters are coming out, and the helicopter's there, and they're zooming in on this thing, and next thing you know, he gets the thing sold out. I don't know if I see that as much. I mean, I obviously wasn't alive back then, but I kind of like try to pay attention to those things. Do you guys see artists doing that sort of stuff nowadays, or is that just like a lost art?
I don't see any of that. I mean, there's smaller scales of stuff like promotion teams, but nothing to the extent where they're blocking a roundabout in a major city or a throwaway. That's pretty interesting though, because Alice Cooper, he's kind of a nut. I could see him doing that.
Yeah, I think that was his manager who did it. Shep.
Thing is that what it all comes down to is, I mean, Jonas, you're a marketing guy, so you know more than anybody does, but it's all about generating buzz. And back then you didn't have social media to generate buzz, and you didn't have all these different, social media platforms. So you had to break down a truck in the middle of the street to generate buzz. Or, if you're U2, you do a concert on the rooftop of a place in downtown LA. And if you're, all these artists did things that were buzz generators of what they could do in their day to generate buzz. And all of that's kind of moved online like everything else has now. And so everyone else is generating buzz, whether it's, through your YouTube channel or your Instagram or your Twitter feed or your whatever. There's plenty of people, I think, out there trying to break down trucks in the middle of Twitter by creating a scandal and creating a whatever. Yeah, I think that still happens today. I don't know how successful it is, but I think it still happens. And maybe not the dramatic ones, but all of the rest of it's happening all the time, every day, by the people who are at least putting in a little bit of effort in this industry.
Yeah, I would say it's actually a global epidemic. I think fake news is destroying the fabric of the world for sure. People are so desperate to control the news cycle and the narrative that they'll just say anything. So I actually disagree. It's no longer a truck. I agree with Eric. It's a flat out lie. Just to see what we take it.
Well, and the funny part about it is that if it's a flat out lie to generate buzz, it's that. And if something's true and that doesn't generate buzz, then people call it a lie to generate buzz. And whatever, the whole point is still just to generate buzz, and you're still trying to control the narrative of what people are talking about. And whether that's in politics or music, the people who end up winning the game in the end are the people that get people talking about them. So
yeah, I mean, the movie industry used to do it all the time. They would have the lead actors have a relationship, and then magically they broke up right before the premiere just to get in the news cycle again. It's just
sweethearts.
Yeah, the gimmicks are endless. So it's everywhere.
And they're getting just constantly recycled too.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick took a different approach with that, allegedly, with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman when they both starred in Eyes Wide Shut. They were dating at the time, and Stanley Kubrick's approach to make a better movie and to get more press around the movie was to, on set, do everything that he can to actually try to get them to break up and sow division so that would actually translate onto the stage. I don't know, just a little anecdote that I thought was interesting. Yeah, Kubrick was a madman. He also faked the moon landing, so there's that too. He's a very, very talented man, breaking up celebrity.
Is that the original fake news?
yeah, it must be. The moment that the sound studio and the camera was invented, people were inventing fake news, visual medium. I think this is, since we don't have a lot of time, there's a bunch of stuff I do want to cover. And one thing I wanted to talk about was how the CDJ3000 was just released in the middle of the pandemic. And, from a marketing perspective, a bunch of people are saying that it's kind of ridiculous that they're putting this out there right now because clubs are shutting down and many don't have, $4,500 available for a pair of these guys. But Pioneer is a smart well-oiled machine who pays, you know, untold amount of money to marketing consultants to make sure that their product hits the market properly. I don't think they're that.
You give them way too much credit. I work with them every day.
Okay, this is what I wanted to ask because because I'm just like, because I'm confused, but at the same time I'm like, I don't think these people are as stupid as people think they are. But you know,
I think it's probably more likely that they had this ball rolling to the point where they couldn't stop it rolling, and then a pandemic happened, and they're like, well, they're coming out. That's just kind of the way it's coming out.
I think with Denon also coming out with like their CDJ, or like not CDJs, whatever they're called. And Jonas, you might know a little bit more about this. Would it have been something where like they were being left behind? And
I mean, they had to release it.
Yeah,
they had to.
What was the progression, Jonas, with Beatport Link and Denon and getting it to sync, and then obviously the competitor Pioneer?
Well, first of all, the CDJ3000 is an interesting piece of hardware. They struggled with it a lot. They had some firmware issues. I played with it last year at ADE, so what is that, 11 months ago? It was scheduled to be launched in January, but they ran into a couple of production issues, so it got delayed a little bit. Then a pandemic hit, so they just sat on this inventory. And guys, the banks, they need to get paid. So you got to ship product. Like, you can't just indefinitely hold off. So again, there is a very, very vocal minority that knows nothing about business, just wants to have a storyline in this game. It doesn't even matter. Pioneer's going to sell hundreds of thousands of those machines. Don't you worry. Pandemic or no pandemic. It's a great piece of hardware with a great future. The Denon SC6000, I think that's the title of it, is a fantastic unit. Unbelievable. And it's really threatening the dominance that Pioneer has in the DJ booth, not because people are going to switch to Denon, but that they're leading in innovation. Their equipment is just becoming better. That doesn't have the allure that Pioneer has, but I mean, you really have to look at history. Techniques lost the battle. They just did not innovate fast enough, and Pioneer's running into that same problem. And Denon is extraordinarily well funded. They are not going to give up on this mission. So, you know, I think the Pioneer 3000, the V10 mixer, and everything else that Pioneer has planned is incredible. Like, it's extraordinarily good. So,
I mean, competition's good anyway for technological advances like that. So they're just going to drive each other. I mean, look at the other big hardware that came out or was announced this week, or, you know, officially, I guess, is the new Machina Plus. And when you look at the battle that they're having with Akai in their MPC line, it's the same thing. I mean, they're going back and forth, and some people like one, some people like the other, and they're driving each other's innovation, which is just going to be good for us in the long run. You know, we're all going to see better stuff because they're driving each other, and I think that Denon and Pioneer are going to do the same thing, or they have been, at least.
Yeah, but I think what you're talking about with Native Instruments is they're changing their whole strategy away from DJ culture.
Yeah.
They're going back in the studio. The Tractor was always an outlier. It will, you know, it's not, it'll always have an audience on it, but it's not their core business. Their core business
with what you know about Pioneer, are they, it almost felt like they were, they made kind of a shift and going towards the production direction with the tourized line and all that stuff. And then it seems like they dipped their toe in it and said, yeah, never mind. And then they've kind of backed away from it. Or is that something that they're going to do more of? Because I personally, you know,
the Pioneer is
the idea of integrating the production side and the DJ performance side, which I thought Pioneer was pretty well positioned to do, because they had basically production gear that with one cable you could link to DJ gear in almost any club, which was pretty cool. Yeah. And then it seems like they kind of pulled back from that.
I don't know the answer all the way, but I don't think Pioneer has pulled back from anything. You know, they got sold last year. That was a big distraction to the company. So it stalled a lot of their momentum. But, uh, you know, I've seen the future and it's pretty legit. So I can't comment on it, but I can tell you they're gonna be fine. I don't know their commitment towards production stuff. Lots of big companies test things. The Torres line is really interesting. But again, it's not a natural fit for them. And with the strength of Roland's ARIA lines and, you know, their vintage synth lines and Roland Cloud, I don't know that they really want to commit all the way to that. You know, it's very hard for brands to get out of their niche. It's because the customer doesn't understand. It's like if we talked about KFC, if KFC all of a sudden started, you know, serving Kobe beef, you know, people would be confused. And so you can't just extend these things. You have to do them like just piece by piece and make little steps so the consumer gets used to it. And I think what Pioneer was doing and still continues to do is push the boundaries of what is it to be a DJ. And that's their real mission. It has less to do with the studio. It's about the performance in the DJ booth. Should equipment be?
And that was what I loved about that. That was really what I loved about the Tourise stuff. Was it was like, okay, I can use this piece of equipment in my studio, and then when I go out to play, I can bring it along and plug it into whatever set of CDJs that are there with the DJ link, and it's going to work. And I thought it was, I was really excited for that direction, and it seemed like they had a flurry of products with like three different Tourise line products that came out really rapid fire, and then nothing after that. So hopefully they're going to keep going down that way.
Well, I mean, I can just the biggest hint is the V10 mixer. Why do you need a mixer with that much capability to play two CDJs?
It's not going to be 6 CDJs.
No, it's going to be equipment. And so it's equipment that needs compressors on each channel, 4-band EQs, dedicated filters with different filter notches, onboard and isolated, you know, amplification. It's completely different. They started over. The V10 is an insanely well-built machine.
Yep.
It rivals all of them. You know, including Ritchie's Zone 1. I mean, whatever it's called, Model 1. You know, they just step to the front again. But that's what you do when you're a $600 million company, is that you wait, see what's happening, and then you go do it better.
What do you guys think about so with the Behringer stuff, how they have been repurposing old patents and, you know, expired patents? What do you guys think about that?
I think it's amazing. You know, like it's a good introduction to, if you always wanted a you know, an Acid TV3 or like whatever, you know, instead of like paying, I don't know, like $500 or $1,000, you can mess around with one for like $150, right? And then if your love for acid house is still there, then you can make the jump to like buy that old machine, right? I just think that it opened up all of those machines to producers that actually wanted to do more like gear oriented stuff, right? Because why not spend, you know, like, I don't know, $200 on a machine, and if you don't like it, you just like sell it. But $200 is not $1,000, right? So I love it. I think it's great.
I use Behringer. I use the baritones, the mix cubes. Those are Behringer. We have them in both studios, in the studio and the studio at Moody, and they're actually really great mix cubes. If you're working in the studio, they're like, I think they're $150, maybe $200 for brand new. So I mean, if you're interested in checking them out, they're great. They're great speakers to do mix downs. And
I think they're discontinued.
No, they came back out.
It doesn't matter.
The one I love, the piece of kit from Behringer that I really love is their the Poly D.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's you know, for the when you look at something like that for $700 versus a Moog for $8,000.
Yeah.
I challenge most people, like 99% of the producers with a home studio out there, I challenge them to hear the difference in those two things. I mean, yeah, you're going to hear it in the classic old machines that have, you know, circuits that are breaking down, so they've got their own unique character. But when you talk about the bass sounds that those things make for 1/10 the cost, I mean, you could literally buy 10 of those Behringers for the cost of one Moog. And I'm sorry, but the sound is not 10 times different. And I agree very much that that's something that's it's kind of a gateway drug for people to get into the idea of analog gear. You know, I don't think it's going to replace the people that would eventually at some point buy that, you know, vintage 1971 Moog, but they might start out with a $600 Behringer and be like, wow, I'm really into this. And they might learn how to do synthesis on a piece of analog gear and learn how oscillators work and learn how filters work and learn how to route a signal. And then they'll go, wow, you know what? I'm kind of into this. This is fun. And then they'll move up to, you know, the next level and the next level and the next level. So I think they're great.
When they're going to break the bank for everybody, I mean, and this is kind of crazy, but like, so with modular, if they come out with modules that do kind of like similar things that all of those like big expensive modules do, I mean, if you want to start your own modular system, you don't have to spend like $500 for just one module, right? And they're probably going to come out with one that's like 150. And yes, there's people that are going to hate, like people hate on like Doepfer, right? Because Doepfer is not like the most expensive like modular piece that you can buy. But if you want to get into it, you don't have to like spend that much money. And I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, and we're really entering an era of ease of access for a lot of things, even down to mixing and mastering in a lot of ways. You know, we mentioned Lander earlier, and we mentioned SoundCloud's mastering, but then there's more professional pieces of software for mixing and mastering, like iZotope stuff, like their Neutron line and their iZotope line. And then there's plugins like Waves Factory Track Spacer, which does multi-band compression, and you know, and through their algorithms, and can determine, you know, which frequencies you know, to compress and which one's a side chain and stuff like that, just by, you know, moving a knob. I've used it; it's crazy. And then there's a bunch of other things in the market as well, like other AI-based stuff. Like if you guys are familiar with the ARC2 system, which does room treatment.
SonarWorks.
Yeah, SonarWorks. Yeah. I've seen that in action and heard it on and off in, you know, a terrible-looking arid apartment, and it's goddamn incredible what happens to the mix. So, you know,
well,
go on.
Sorry, just going back to Neutron, right? So like if you're starting to make music, if you hit that and it like does like its own like EQing and all this other stuff, you can actually learn based on that what is suggested. So like later on, if you want to like get the EQs of like Logic or Ableton, like whatever, you can actually replicate that, right? And start learning that theory that I feel like before it was not accessible. Like a lot of the reading material that's out there is not for electronic music, right? It's more for like, you know, full-on studios and like how to like EQ like an actual kick drum, but it's a completely different story like doing that for electronic music. And I think that that's the beauty of iZotope. Even for like, if going back to the artist that wants to like release their own tracks, right? They can do like their own like mastering for like Spotify, right? With the Ozone line. So I don't know. I think it's great. All of that is just gonna prevent people from getting blocked on the fact of like, I don't know how to like do a mix down, right? Which a lot of times it doesn't permit artists to be creative because they focus on that part instead of like focusing on the experience of like making the music.
Yeah, I have both, and my mix downs and mastering still sucks. So
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think that they're incredibly.
It's all in the
They're not
ear.
quite that. Yeah. I don't think they're quite there yet. But do you guys see the mixing engineer having, or the mastering engineer having to, adapt to this, or do you think they're just going to kind of go the way of, the any other piece of music technology that might have been relevant in the past but isn't now?
I mean, not one piece of software is going to save your crappy production.
Yeah.
I am 100% guilty of that. And what I did is I just gave it up, and I literally tell Ben, it's not my problem, it's yours.
And I just tried to.
I mean, it's not. I want to focus on being creative. I'm not a mix engineer. I don't know how to do it, and I don't care. I throw the ozone on the end of my mastering channel just to feel the power in my mix, to see if I've got the power where I want it. But as soon as the mix down time comes, I remove all that stuff, and Ben and the mix down team does what they do, and it sounds massive.
But Jonas knows all the rules, and he's this close to like becoming.
Yeah, but it's not even about that. I don't want to be an engineer. It's a craft. Like, you should respect the craft. The songwriting craft is different than the arrangement craft, which is different than the top line craft, which is different than the mix down craft, which is different than the mastering craft. Those are all crafts. It's ridiculous to think that you could download a template, get the right sample collection, somehow know how to arrange a track and write a hit and master it and mix it yourself. Like, give me a break. It's just like absolutely impossible. Can 17-year-old super genius kids do it? Yeah, of course they can. But that's super rare. The reality is it takes an army to get this stuff done.
It seems like,
it's great that, SoundCloud had to do it. Everything on their platform that wasn't from a major label is terrible. And so they had to get UGC mastering built in, and they did it with Dolby. I haven't heard it, so I don't have an opinion. But, I've heard the Lander mastering. It's pretty good. It's just a white label, I think, of Isotope's technology. And it's just, basically there's some mathematic formulas where you can kind of get it in the pocket. Is it as good as Ben would do, or, some of the people we know? No. But is it good enough for, your second track of your life? Of course, it's awesome. It's just, there's a time and place for all these tools.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of labels, even smaller labels, are requiring, before you send the track to them, for it to have like a near perfect mix down, so they can send it to, their mastering engineer. I could be wrong about this in most labels, but I've always seen that where, the mix down is
yeah, but don't you listen? I think it's like the labels and the whole industry has to have some gates in front of it. Okay. But things get past those gates all the time. If you listen to Billie Eilish's first album that she did with her brother in the basement, it's completely distorted. It's not a great piece of production.
But it's great music.
And it's fantastic music.
I agree. I love Billie Eilish. She's amazing.
And so it's just like, sometimes you get so obsessed on the perfection, and you haven't actually made anything that deserves being perfected. And that's a hardcore way to look at it, but it's just very true.
I think all you have to do is take a step back a few years before all this technology existed and hear some really, really amazing music that had some really, really poor engineering quality to it. But the music itself was so amazing that there's plenty of timeless songs out there that didn't have great engineering, but they had great songwriting and great instrumentalists and things like that. So, these are all just things that are going to, people are nitpicking off of this stuff, but that's not what makes the difference. It's like, last week we had the conversation about, how funny it is when people complain about DJing on vinyl versus DJing electronic, DJing digitally. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, programming is what's important.
Yeah.
And when you're writing a song, the song itself is what's important. The other stuff will make it better, but it's not going to make it good if it sucks in the first place.
But what about like club music, for instance, where you're pumping it out of these $30,000-$40,000, tuned sound systems, and you can definitely hear the difference between, the track that was played before and the track that was played after it. Does that have any impact on it, or do you think people are like, oh, that's just a good song, we don't notice that, it's a little distorted, or, the top end is too much, or the low end's too much, or anything?
I mean, listen, running a nightclub for 11 years, I wasn't running it, but being a part of a nightclub for 11 years, the technology that's running modern sound systems is completely different than it was when I started DJing with vinyl. And I'm telling you, there's no worse medium to take into a nightclub than vinyl. I don't even care what anybody says. It's so loud. The needles are vibrating. They're introducing distortion and feedback into the cycle that's being re-amplified and re-amplified and re-amplified. And it blows speakers like crazy. Ask anybody from that era how many times they replace speakers. Constantly. Because you can't trust the DJ with the mixer, because they're going to redline it, hands down. So go to today. You look at this digital equipment with digital signal line all the way into digital, basically supercomputers that run amplifiers with limiters and crossovers, and you hardly ever blow a speaker. You can actually go the whole night at 100+ decibels and walk out without your ears ringing, because there's no distortion in the signal. It's a completely
and without the speakers
world.
catching on fire.
Yeah, it's a completely different world. And so does sound quality matter? Of course it matters. And you can really hear it on a modern sound system running, through a supercomputer. Of course you can hear it, and you should care about your craft. That's what I'm saying. When you rip a track off YouTube because you just have to have it, play it at your own peril. It's going to sound terrible. But if you have to have it, and I've been guilty of it, didn't help me get one. I had to have a track. Only play it so I could.
Hey, calm down. Whoa, calm down. I think
I'll edit that out.
I think we've pulled some magic.
I mean, listen, in my 30-year DJing career, I did that one time. So, but I had to have that track. I did.
You did.
So
and you played it.
I played it.
And it sounded great.
It sounded okay. But
what track was it?
That's not important.
Oh, come on. That
it's not important. It's really not important. It's just about, no, it's not embarrassing. It's just,
well, the track was never
saying you understand that you're compromising, but you just do it because, listen, I go through this stupid debate all the time with Beatport. Can you hear the difference between a 192 MP3 and a 320 MP3 and a wave? And the answer is, in your studio where it's perfectly clear signal channel and your speakers and your headphones, you could probably hear it. In a nightclub, which has 5 seconds of reverb in the building, if you shut the sound off, it goes 0% chance you could hear that. Right. 0%.
It's funny though, the one thing that I hear more often than not when listening to productions that people are doing, that it will kill the sound faster than anything else when you bring a track from downloading it off of Beatport and then you play it in a club, is if you don't take the time to make sure your track sounds good in mono. Because most systems in most nightclubs are mono out of the function of the system, because they can't have it sound different for a guy standing closer to this speaker than it does for a guy standing closer to this speaker. Yeah. So it has to come out mono in a lot of cases. I mean, a huge majority of clubs. So if you have a track that you're producing and it sounds crappy in mono, it's going to sound crappy in the club no matter what. It's going to sound
like
crappy in the club.
Phasing and canceling sounds.
A stereo
it's the
signal
worst.
in a quadraphonic sound system is just going to cancel itself out.
Yeah.
So you have, that's another producer thing you have to learn.
Thing to do. No, it's the simplest thing to do. I mean, I just started doing YouTube production videos, and one of the first ones I did was saying to everybody, put a utility plugin on your master channel and just make a keyboard shortcut so you can toggle back and forth between mono and stereo all the time while you're producing, so you don't just compound those problems while you're making a track, because that will kill the sound of your track in a club faster than anything else. Anything. Forget about the mastering and everything else. If it sounds shit in mono, but it's mastered perfectly, it's still gonna sound shitty in the club.
That's what those mix cubes are, Eric. They're
Yeah.
mono. So
Yeah,
if your mix
awesome
sounds good on the Behringers that are $150, the little tiny mix cubes that I have right there. I mean, that's the whole thing. So you don't really, that's what eliminates that whole my track needs to be in mono. Your bass and your kick don't have to be in mono. Your mix needs to be able to sound good in mono on crappy
I'm sure all the
speakers.
parts are still there.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm just saying on like crappy
That's the
speakers, on crappy $16 earbuds, if the mix sounds great, it's going to sound good on amazing speakers. I mean, it's just the easy equation of just going through the steps of references.
Yeah,
Yeah, and checking it in mono is like the easiest thing you can do, and it can have the worst impact when you get into a club if it's not right.
Hey guys, I do need to bounce.
I know.
I apologize about that. I'd love to stay on all night, but I can't.
well, we appreciate your time either which way. You got a lot of great insight, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Nice seeing everyone. Take it easy.
Good seeing you.
Shoot me a text.
I will. Oh yeah,
All
I'll forward it. Sorry.
right.
You're gonna be famous, Miguel. Famous. Bye.
There you go. Cool. Thanks, Jonas. All right, then there were 4. If you
I have
guys,
to go too, though.
You gotta go too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a prior agenda that I've been putting off, but definitely appreciate the time. I mean, and it's great to hear. I mean, it's really good to hear some insight from Jonas. I mean, as lucky as I am and as Miguel, you know, we get to obviously converse with Jonas on a lot of things that are happening in the music industry that are kind of behind the scenes. And it's such, I mean, it's a blessing for us because we're in the industry. So we get to kind of feel some of the aftermath or kind of get some insight on what's going on. But I mean, it's cool that I'm glad that Jonas is able to join, and I'm glad that and again, I'm glad you guys invited me to be on this. And it's always good, even if I could sit back and listen to a conversation with you guys. It's been a good experience.
Yeah. No, thank you, Ben. You really set this all up for me. I just messaged you and I was like, hey, you want to come on this thing? And then next thing you know, get Jonas and Miguel, and I like casually drop, well, if there's someone else you want to bring on, who knows who that could be. And
again, like I could work with I mean, I was trying to get Hippie to come on, and he's like, Ben, I really don't have anything to talk about right now. And I was like,
neither do we.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm like, we're all in quarantine. Come on, bro. It's not that bad. And then, but I think that he would probably be willing to do it. And then I talked to, I talked to Giselle quite a bit, and I think Jeremiah and JCO and Vedic might be down to do something too. They have a new basically group that they are working on. It's Almagama. Yeah, Almagama, and it's they had a release on Craft Tech, which is huge, but it's during the pandemic, so I don't really know I don't know if they're really seeing the light that they need to with this new project, but that's something that's going to be huge. But I mean, I have some releases coming out. I know Miguel has releases coming out, and we can come back on maybe at a later time and maybe go through it. And I also can maybe I'll just throw this out here, and maybe David Ireland would be willing to do something. He's the director of the Winter Music Conference, and I've been working with him, and we're working on a project right now. We've been working probably for like the last 2 months, just on a collab project. But I know that he's always constantly doing stuff with music, and Magnetic Magazine, and he's got such I know that you've been in talks with them too. So maybe we can. Maybe
Yeah, thanks for that. Again, in person, you know, rather than in text.
Oh no, it's fine because David's traveling right now with his family. I think he's in Santa Barbara. But when he gets back, it's supposed to be next week, and we're supposed to be in the studio. So, but when he does get back, you know, I'll bring it up to him, and then maybe because I know you've been doing a great job with these, and I've seen. Gosh, I mean, how many views did you guys have? 7,000 views on your last episode?
Yeah, it reached 7,000 people. And we've
That's
got
incredible.
We've got a total between the two of about 7,000 overall.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah, in a Colorado market, and you know it drops off pretty quickly, but you know we get there's a good group of people who watch them pretty much all the way through, or at least an hour of it. And you know, and then to me that means people care, and they're kind of starved for this sort of thing. And while DJs, you know, would basically voice their you know, their opinions on music through the music they played, that's not as available anymore. So I have kind of seen this as, you know, a way that DJs are able to, you know, play out in some sort of way, but rather than playing out with their music, they're able to play out with their philosophies.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing that I've noticed, I think, which is kind of hilarious through this whole quarantine, is that, like on Instagram channels or pages, like you'll make a comment. Like I think I made a comment to, who was it? I'll use the example, Blondish, Miguel.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, this is a really cool. Like I put top or something on her Instagram because I thought it was cool. And she's like, oh, really? Thank you for, and I'm like, I've posted stuff on your IG for a while. Like now
they got nothing to do but respond to comments.
Yeah. You know, and the thing
like
is,
Miguel said before, I mean, it gives people a chance to engage with their audience directly. And
but we've been that way.
Yeah, no,
we've been doing that, Eric. We've been doing that from day one. That's what we do as an artist.
Yeah,
if you comment like, oh wow, cool, I really think this is great, I'm going to be like, awesome, thanks for the support, hopefully you're doing well. Like that's what artists like myself and you and Miguel, that's what we do. That's what we've been doing the whole time. I don't know why.
You even come out when I play, which is nice.
Yeah, and I don't even go out.
I know.
I've been out. What?
Like when you come out, I'm like, it's like when a vampire comes out of his thing, and I'm like, wow, they let you out of the studio. How did that work?
Last year I went out.
You're the one guy, and I promise you're the one guy that I've been thinking about through this whole quarantine that probably this affected their life the least, because you spend so many hours alone in a windowless room in your life. That's your life. And so I was like,
he's got a window. Don't let that room fool you. He's got a window in that place.
It's a sunroof.
Yeah.
Sky roof.
With the blinds full.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the whole thing is that you know, you're right, Eric, because, and I'm not like, everyone's like, oh, these clubs are closed and stuff like that. I mean, I of course, man, I hate it. I hate to see everyone going through this, but as far as being affected, I mean, the only thing that has affected me is I don't have to drive to work during the day. I get to sleep more, and I have to go run outside instead of going to a gym. And everything else has been the same. I go to the grocery store once a week.
Maybe don't invite your boss to see this, or you can edit that out. That you're sleeping more.
No, I mean, well, no, I do. I don't have to commute. My commute into the tech center is like an hour, you know, an hour give and take, 45 minutes each way. That's 2 hours extra I get to sleep, or an hour extra I get to sleep. And the main thing to me is like, the hard thing, Eric, is for me right now is to be, so since I'm working from this space every day, is how am I going to be creative? So after I get done with my normal duties during the day and I log off, I go for a run, or I go for a walk, or I go play, you know, go for a bike ride, whatever I can do for like an hour and 30 minutes, and then come back in the studio and stay focused. And that's the only way I could stay creative, because I have to separate work from the creative time. And that's been the most difficult thing. But as far as like going out, I never went out. The only time I went out is like, I mean, I came down to see you like, I think in a year, I think I came twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that was probably the 4 times I went out. Like I just,
I was gonna say
the last time I went out was February 15th. I played at Vinyl with Jonas and we opened First Round.
Oh yeah.
That was the last time I've been out. That's the last time I had a drink.
This is the last time you had a drink.
Yeah, that's the last time. I haven't had a drink since. Like, I mean, yeah, I've had like a Coors Light or whatever beer with like Giselle, but I haven't had like, I don't have any alcohol in my house. So I don't, it's just like, this is the normal thing, man. And it's been good. It's been good for me, but like you said, Eric, I'm pretty prepared for this.
exactly.
Yeah. And now that you can't play,
it's the same here. My day job, I work from home anyway, so I'm
Right.
either in my home office or making music. And although I have made a bunch of modifications to the home studio to get it more comfortable for all this.
Yeah, you have to. Soundproofing, it's great. But sorry for the delayed and ongoing sentences here. I gotta dip. And
Cheers, man.
Too.
But it's been great being a part of this again, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Anytime you guys want to come on, this is just as much of a way to, promote people within the scene as it is to quell the unshakable boredom that happens when you're not interacting with people as much. So, whenever you guys want to hop on, I'm willing to do this whenever. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a weekly thing, bi-weekly or whatever. I'm really open, because I'm just trying to create content. That's the name of the game in 2020 as far as, getting engagement. So
Cool.
Right there with you, man. Right there with you.
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
A toda la gente de Guate, love you guys.
ciao, amigo. Ciao, Pasero.
Awesome.
Adios.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See you
Good
guys.
to see you guys.
Take care.